Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar from Burnout to Balance, Best Practices for Efficiency, Profitability, and Staff Satisfaction. My name is Gary Tarazzi, and here with the webinar team at Rectangle Health, and we appreciate you taking the time to join us. Workplace burnout is obviously more than just fatigue. It's the elevated level of pressure that comes with meeting rising expectations and demands. And today's webinar is going to help you all navigate and overcome those pressures. And it aligns very closely with the value Rectangle Health's Practice Management Bridge, a platform leveraged by thousands of providers just like yours across the country to simplify the business side of care. When I pass the mic over to our speaker today, I'll drop a link in the chat so you all can learn more about Practice Management Bridge on your own time and what we do here at Rectangle Health, and schedule a personalized one-on-one consultation to see the system in action. Few housekeeping items before I zip my mouth and get this training kicked off. This is a 1 hour course valid for one CE credit, and we are a PACE provider for CE through AGD. In order to receive CE credit, you must attend the webinar for the entirety of the presentation and participate in the 3 polling questions. Please allow for up to 2 weeks to receive your CE credit via email. And we have a lot to cover today, so we ask that you please forward any and all questions to webinar@rectanglehealth.com, and we will promptly respond. I'll drop that email address in the chat here too, so you all have it. And then within 24 hours of this webinar, I'll be sending over the recording, links to upcoming no-cost CE credit webinars, as well as more details on how your practice can leverage technology to combat burnout without sacrificing that personalized human interaction between you and your patients. If you are joining us on mobile, please note the experience is much better from your desktop. You may also struggle to answer the mandatory polling questions if you're joining us on audio only or mobile. With all of that, it is my great pleasure to introduce a great friend of ours here at Rectangle Health, host Stephen J. Anderson. As many of you know, Stephen's the founder of Total Patient Service Institute, co-founder of Crown Council, and the Smiles for Life Foundation. As an entrepreneur, presenter, author, philanthropist, Stephen has developed systems for success for professionals, executives, and youth alike. As the founder of over a dozen businesses, Stephen has propelled organizations and individuals to the highest levels of performance and productivity. He's been named the Businessman of the Year and is an Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year finalist. I'll drop a link to Stephen's LinkedIn profile, so you all can connect and chat there as well. And with that, Stephen, take it away.
Perfect. Gary, thank you. That was exactly the way my mother wrote that. So she's proud that you did right.
Happy I
So,
could
hey,
do right by her.
great to be back with everybody. I love doing these webinars together, Gary, with all of you and the team at Rectangle Health. And this is going to be rapid fire. For those of you that are with us for the first time, I'll just give you a quick backstory and disclosure on where all this comes from. So as Gary mentioned, I'm the founder of the Total Patient Service Institute, and we specialize in one thing, and that is the word yes. So our whole team at Total Patient Service works every day with dental teams all over the country to help them hear yes more often from their patients. Today we're gonna talk about that in terms of how you can have more balance and get more of the success in a shorter period of time so you can live a sane, rational, amazing life. And so that's what we do at Total Patient Service on any given day. Our team of practice coaches are all over the country working in practices to implement the highest level of patient service and case acceptance skills in dentistry. And so we have a pretty good pulse on what's going on in America and what's going on in dental practices. And I'm going to share some of that experience with you today. In addition, as Gary mentioned, I'm one of the founders of the Crown Council, which is a nationwide network of top practices that are committed to creating a culture of success in their practice. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that those practices do to have a great culture, to stay balanced, and to keep burnout at bay. So with that, I'm going to give you a quick heads up. This is in the chat, and Gary, I think it landed in the chat. I just inserted a quick mini URL. It's the bit.ly thing. I think is the first thing in the chat box. So if you're on your computer, you can either just copy that and just post it in your browser, and you can download the resource sheet for today. So I'd highly recommend this because we're going to go through some things really, really fast. And this will give you your action plan to operationalize what we're going to talk about today. Alternatively, you can take your phone, you can scan this QR code, and you can download it that way as well. So whichever way works better for you, two ways to download the resource sheet for today. You'll want to do this. This is going to have, we're going to go over a lot of things you're going to want to share with your whole team. So this will help you. A great tool to put that into action. We're big believers that the only purpose of education is not knowledge. It is results producing action. And that's what we're going to talk about today is the actions you can take to stay balanced and have a happy practice life where you're getting the results that you want. So with that, we're going to do a quick history lesson today to get started. And I'm going to take you back to one of the iconic moments in space exploration history. So this is the crew from Apollo 13. Many of you are probably familiar with the movie. It was, in my opinion, it was one of Tom Hanks' finest performances. He got to play Jim Lovell, who was one of the crew members of the Apollo 13 mission. Apollo 13 was one of NASA's missions to land on the moon. And as everybody's familiar with the story, that never happened. So as they were on their way, there was a malfunction that caused irreparable damage to the lunar module. And so they had to figure out a way. The mission became, instead of landing on the moon, it was getting back to Earth. And so everybody at Mission Control and everybody on the crew worked the entire time to figure out a solution to what seemed like a nearly impossible problem. And so working together, they figured out a way to literally patch this entire thing together in order to get back to Earth. Now, here's the point of all of this. Every day we have objectives. Every day we have results that we're trying to get. In this case, the original result that they were trying to achieve was land on the moon and then get back. Then that mission changed. We've got to not only get back to Earth, but we have to get the crew back to Earth alive and in one piece. Not just get back, not just the result, but get the crew back alive. So here's the point. Our entire objective today and every day is to get you back alive, well balanced, back home every day and back to the office by focusing on being effective. There's a big difference between being efficient and being effective. Efficiency is about speed. Effectiveness is about the total end result. If it were just about efficiency, it would have been about, just get the mission completed. Effectiveness was get the mission completed with the crew alive, back in one piece, right? Survival. We're doing more than survival here, but we're gonna focus on effectiveness, not just doing things faster and better, but doing things in a way that will get us a better result, ultimately saving time. So our job today is get you back like the Apollo 13 crew, smiling, alive, and ready to move forward with whatever your next mission is at home or in the office to continue on. Effectiveness is the rule of the day. So every day in the practice, we focus, we meaning all of us, we focus on three things. Scheduling, right? The success of the office has everything to do with scheduling patients and running a productive schedule, then producing, then finally collecting. So this is the ongoing, never-ending action: schedule, produce, collect. And all of the things that stand in the way of having a balanced, effective practice in life have to do with the things that happen in each of these three areas. So today we're going to go through 21 different things of many that you can do to be more effective and have a more balanced life in your practice as you schedule, produce, and collect. So let's take a look at tips for scheduling that'll make it more effective, not only save time, but get a better end result. All right, so number one, this is a culture thing, and this becomes a standard practice in your practice. So everybody on the team agrees to abide by this cultural standard. And that standard is: when you're early, you're on time. When you're on time, you're late. And when you're late, you're lost. So, for example, if the morning meeting starts at 7:45, then the cultural standard would be that you get there early. You don't walk in at 7:50 or just right at starting time. Is that the meeting starts at 7:45. So the only way you can be on time is to be early, right? So that's the first, if the number one reason practices run behind, which causes stress on everybody's part. It's stressful for the clinical team. It's stressful for the front office team because they have to try and keep all the patients happy. It's stressful for the patients. So if we want more balance, we have to prevent the number one reason practices run behind and are stressful is because they start behind. If you start late, you're almost guaranteed you're going to run late the rest of the day. So number one simple rule, cultural standard: when you're early, you're on time. And that's for every single member of the team. Number two, this is a habit of the most productive teams that we work with at Total Patient Service nationwide. If I had to recommend one habit that would make the biggest difference in terms of a team member engagement and de-stressing the day and being more effective, it's what we call the morning opportunity meeting. It is not a huddle. Huddle is what you do in football. A morning opportunity meeting is something altogether different. 10 to 15 minutes that is focused on today and primarily on today's opportunities. How are we going to make it more convenient and easier for our patients today to get the treatment that they want done? So for example, let me give you 4 areas of discussion of many. So, and we're looking at today, meeting about today's patients, today's schedule. I'm going to talk about 4 groups of patients. Group number 1, new patients. What do we know about the new patients? What have they shared with us when they scheduled about potential needs? How could we potentially accommodate same-day treatment for the new patients that are coming in today? Second group of patients is restorative patients. So, of all the restorative patients that are coming in today, which of those patients have additional unscheduled treatment? They might be coming in for one procedure. Are there other procedures they have not scheduled that we could potentially treat today if we gave them the opportunity? Third group, hygiene patients. So of the hygiene patients coming in today, which of those have unscheduled treatment that if we have time in the schedule, could we accommodate same day treatment opportunities? And then finally, new patients, or excuse me, emergency patients. Where are the times in the schedule that we have blocked out for emergency patients? How can we accommodate those? Because many times they are one of the best opportunities for getting long-term new patients if we can accommodate them today. So meeting together as a team, not a new concept. And I'll tell you that most of what I'll talk about today is not some new, revolutionary thing as much as it is the discipline of doing the things that reduce stress, help us run more effectively and get better results in a shorter period of time. So having a plan where everybody's on the same page, communicates first thing, that we all have the direction for the day. Again, what we call the morning opportunity meeting is a critical first step. Get started right, and the day tends to run a lot more smoothly when you're early and when you have an effective morning opportunity meeting that's run the same way every day consistently. Next, this is the Hotel California. So you're all familiar with the iconic classic song from the Eagles, the Hotel California. And it is the mantra of the most successful teams we work with in terms of being effective and reducing the amount of time and stress that has to be spent on scheduling. So you might say, Steve, what does scheduling have to do with the Hotel California? So you remember the chorus of the song. So the chorus said, I won't sing it. Well, maybe I will. No, I'm not going to sing it. But basically, the chorus says you can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave. And so that becomes the standard for a less stressful, more effective scheduling time. The rule is no patient leaves the practice. No patient ever leaves their existing appointment without having their next appointment scheduled. Nobody leaves, right? Because the amount of time, effort, and energy it takes to track a patient down and schedule them after they leave creates stress, creates an unbelievable workload. So this becomes a habit. Nobody leaves until they schedule their. Now, obviously, there's exceptions to that, but the systems are all built around we're going to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to schedule. Now, I'll give you an example. Gary, can you be my patient? Will you be my patient here for a minute? You didn't know
Happy
you were going to
to.
be on the program, but you ready?
Yeah,
Okay, here's the
absolutely.
wrong way to do it. Let's say that you're at the end of your hygiene appointment or your regular appointment. Here's what I'm not going to say. Gary, would you like to schedule your next appointment?
I'd love to.
Now, why don't I ever ask that question? Because the alternative answer could be what?
I'll get back to you.
Uh-huh. Yeah. And they never do. So
It's
I never ask, do you want to schedule your next appointment? What I am going to say is, Gary, while you're here and it's convenient, let's go ahead and schedule your next appointment so we make sure and keep everything on this great track that you're on today. Now, does this same day of the week and time, does that typically work well for you in your schedule, right? So it's an assumptive, I'm going to keep moving through this. I'm never not going to ask him if he wants to. We're going to go ahead and schedule it. You are now in the Hotel California, Gary. You are never leaving the
love it. It's my
practice.
favorite song, by the way.
There you go. All right. Thanks for being our patient. All right. So here's the next tip. So this is based on a piece of research that came out of the United Kingdom, came out of England. And what they found is that there was a 57% higher show rate when text reminder messages went out with the patient's first name. So as you work with your software on your messaging, that is one piece that you want to make sure is always use the patient's first name. The research did not find that there was any additional impact with their last name, but their first name made an impact. So any text message or email that you send out, you personalize it. You can do all this in the program that you use. There's user-defined messaging where you can customize the messages you send out. But the recommendation is always, 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 always use the patient's first name. So like this one is modeled, say, Steve, your appointment is at 9:30 a.m. on Monday, March 24th. We're looking forward to seeing you then. Use my first name in any message you send out. You'll have that boost your effectiveness because the response will go up by 57% when you use the patient's first name. Next, everybody at this point in our technological evolution in our society should be doing electronic medical forms. So electronic check-in that integrates into your practice management software so that you don't have to fumble with the papers and scan them in. Everywhere I'm looking for ways to save time, save money, be more efficient and more effective, and make it easier for everybody in the whole equation. So electronic forms, so that it's integrated into your practice management system, saves you a ton of time. Second recommendation, this is on the patient side, is format your forms in such a way that they only have to do things once. So many times with multiple forms, we've all had this experience where on every form, I got to start over. Your name, your address, your all the same information. The beautiful thing with electronic forms is they only have to answer the questions one time. Only put my name in once, and then everything else follows. So it saves the patient time, creates a better experience, and saves you time because it just integrates directly into their record and you don't have to spend the time of scanning and doing all the other stuff. So electronic forms are a must today. If you're doing them, awesome, rock on. If you're not, it might be time to take a look at how to integrate that into your practice. Now, speaking of forms, let me talk about your dental health history form. This is one of my favorite things for creating more satisfaction in your professional life. One of my favorite procedures in dentistry is whitening. Who wants anything but white teeth? Everybody wants white teeth, right? And the tragedy is that only about the average practice only whitens about 1.5 smiles a month. And it's one of the best. It's what I call the gateway procedure. It's the gateway to cosmetic dentistry. So almost everybody that I've met has some kind of whitening question on their dental health history form. Here is my preferred question. You ready? If you could whiten your teeth for an investment anyone could afford, would you be interested? That is the exact question. We've tested this all over the country, and the response to this, unless somebody has veneers or dentures, the answer to this is overwhelmingly yes. So then here's the follow-up question. So if they've checked this on their dental history form when they checked in, then the follow-up question in the treatment room would be this. If you were talking to me, if you're the dental assistant or the hygienist, you would say, so Steve, I see in looking at your dental history form that you are interested in whitening your teeth. Tell me about that, right? And get a little more information, what they're interested in, what they've considered in the past. And then here's the follow-up question. So you would ask me, so you would say, so Steve, would you consider $1 a day to be a pretty reasonable investment to get your teeth whitened? So let me tell you how this works. It's really kind of fun. Is as long as everything is in alignment today, we can get started today whitening your teeth, and it's just $1 a day for the rest of your life. No, not the rest of it. It's just $1 a day until the balance of, and then whatever you charge for whitening. So it's $1 a day or $30 a month until the balance of whatever you normally charge for whitening is paid off. Now, let me just say this. This is the only procedure that in a total patient service that we say it's okay if you want to do the financing. Everything else, we'll talk about patient financing in a minute. You want to have a third party financing or whatever, but this one is a laydown because of the popularity of the procedure and its low cost to you. Right? So that's how it works. Now, here's how it works on the back end. So here's one, I promise you, if you'll do this, your whitening numbers will go through the roof. If you have the right question and you ask the right follow-up question, and then you have the back end. So here's the back end, is you have the technology to do a card on file, credit card on file, and it has to be PCI compliant, which is the regulation of how you securely store credit cards. So it has to be in an online system that is secure, that is encrypted. No one in the practice ever sees it. Nobody in the practice ever sees the credit card number. But you have a way to store the credit card on file, and then you can set up a system where it will automatically charge that card $30 every month until the balance is paid off. All right. So that's the back end of it. You have to have a credit card solution in your practice that'll store credit cards on file, and will have the ability to do that. Okay, so that's my whitening deal. That'll make your life so much more fun. You'll do a lot more whitening, and it's an easy way to do it. And the thing I love about this is white smiles or happy smiles. If there is a procedure in dentistry that just is instant gratification, it's when you whiten patient smiles. All right, Gary, I think we have our first poll question. So this is, you got to be paying attention if you want your CE credit today. So
right.
here's your first poll question. You can keep a patient credit card on file if, and this is the single choice answer, if it's in a locked drawer in the office, if it's a PCI compliant secure database, if it's in a written file outside the office, or never.
All right, the results are coming in. Give everybody another few seconds here. Everyone was definitely paying attention, Steve. So we'll end it
Good.
here and sharing the results.
There you go.
97%. There you go.
I'm well-educated crew. Love that. So that is that's a nationwide standard for any business. Anytime they keep any kind of credit card information, got to be in a PCI compliant secure database. Otherwise, Gary, I think the penalties for not doing that are pretty stiff, aren't they? They're
Yes,
like, they're
extremely stiff.
heavy. You do not want to be stepping out of line on this one.
Exactly.
Okay. All right, here's our next tip. This is, again, this is one of the best habits of the best teams we work with that have very, very effective systems. And it is a patient intake system where not necessarily a script, we call it the new patient relationship form, where you walk through a series of questions that you ask the new patient, the potential new patient, that will almost guarantee that they'll schedule. We could do an entire webinar just on this piece, on patient intake and lead conversion, but it is one of the things that makes your time more effective, helps you schedule more patients more effectively, and helps you get more quality information so you can give the patient an amazing experience. So whatever your patient intake system is, if you have one, great. If you don't, this is one of the things we work really, really hard on as an organization, is to get this dialed in to create a great patient relationship. Stress in a dental office, many times one of the biggest areas of stress is when the patient relationship does not go as planned. And this is what gets it started on the right foot, so that you're bringing them in on the right basis. Okay, here's the next tip. This is one of my favorite things. So I'll give you the backstory. We track, one of the things that we love to track on our team at Total Patient Service is the number of potential new patients who call compared to how many schedule. Okay, so potential new patient calls to scheduled appointments. Now, we always thought that 80% was a pretty good ratio. So 80% of the people who call, we get them scheduled. And so we track that. In offices all over the country, we track that number. And so one particular month, I was tracking this number, and I was looking at different practices we work with around the country. And the ratios were pretty close, 70%, 79%, 82%, 80%. And then I stumbled across an office that had 130% calls to new patient appointments. 130%. It's like, how do you do that? How do you schedule more people than call? So I called the appointment coordinator and I said, it's calls to schedule appointments. I think you did the math wrong. And she said, no. She goes, it's right. So I said, well, how do you schedule more people than asked to be scheduled? And she goes, well, here's how I do it. Every time I schedule a new patient, I always ask before I finish the call, who else should we go ahead and schedule while it's convenient and I have you on the phone? Who else should we go ahead and schedule? And she said, it's amazing. About 1 out of every 3 new patients will say, my husband, my wife, my son, my daughter, my dog needs to come in and get their teeth cleaned too, right? Just because they asked. In other words, when someone's looking for a new dental home, what are the chances that someone else in that same household or someone they know is looking for a new dental home as well? So just ask. Who else? Not, is there anyone else? That's not the question. It's, who else should we go ahead and schedule while it's convenient and I have you on the phone? Who else? Just makes your time that much more effective. Schedule more patients, and it costs nothing to ask that question. Who else should we go ahead and schedule? All right, next. This one's a given. I'm assuming that everybody here block schedules. We call it in our system rock, sand, water scheduling. You see, that's what we put at the top of these columns. So rocks are major production. You can decide on the dollar amount, but it might be anything over $500 is major rocks, and you pre-block those times for major production. Sand would be anything under that amount. So that would be fillings and other things that don't have a dollar amount that's as high. And then water is zero production. So those would be crown seats, those might be checks, whatever they might be. So rock, sand, water. So having that formatted so you have a productive day every day and you plan it way in advance and you don't violate the blocks. So again, nothing new. And it's one of the de-stressors that the top practice is used to make sure they have a productive day every day. All right. I mean, these are just a couple of production tips. We talked about scheduling tips. Just a couple of production tips that'll make your life less stressful. So, production tips. In terms of what makes the production area more effective and a big time saver. So, the first is what I call, and this is a bonus one, is what we call a relationship link. And here's the standard. Anything that you can say outside the treatment room should be said in the treatment room. In other words, if you have anything to say to each other about the patient, say it in front of the patient. Because what we found is the more communication you have in front of them reinforces everything that you've discussed with them. We call it a relationship link. It is not a handoff. It is not a transfer. It's a linking up the relationship. So anything you've been saying outside the room, say it inside the room. Short of an emergency, anything that has to do with that patient, communicate it in the treatment room where the patient can hear it and you can dialogue together, saves time and builds the patient relationship. Next, here's the next rule is that I'm going to come back to this is the next rule is once you start a restorative procedure, nobody leaves the treatment room. That's the standard. If you want to reduce stress, be more balanced and be more effective, that's the standard is nobody leaves the treatment room once you've started that procedure. Well, what's the biggest cause of having to get up and leave the treatment room is an instrument or material that's missing. So then the assistant has to jump up, run out, grab it, come back. Done with that. So one of my favorite systems is the color system, where all the tub and tray color system, where everything's color coded for different types of procedures so that it takes all the guesswork out of it. So this is one of my favorite things. I don't have any interest in this company, but if you go to Zerk.com, it's one of my favorite systems to be consistent, predictable, and more effective. So everyone stays in the treatment room and you reduce the stress of having to jump up and go get things that are missing because you forgot them. Well, if the system's set up, you never have to leave and it's a lot less stressful for everybody. All right, let's talk about money. We're going to talk about collections, what you can do to be more effective, save time, and get better results in the collections area. All right, so this is polling question. I'm doing this one in advance, so you get to on this one. I'm gonna share with you the answer after we do the polling question. So, question is, where is the best place in the office for scheduling and financial arrangements? The best place to do it. So, is it the front desk, the consult room, chair side, or just let him do it online? What's the best place for scheduling and financial arrangements?
We got a race here, Steve.
Yes, and I can't vote, so
We'll give it another
not
second.
allowed to vote.
All right, we'll wrap it up here, and the results are in.
Ooh, we got a kind of a variation here. I love this.
Yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
All right, so here's what our research has found is the most effective place to do financial arrangements and scheduling is chairside. Here's why. Now, and I'll put this one footnote disclaimer here. As far as I know, doing financial arrangements chairside with the exception of the state of California. So, Gary, believe it or not, there is a law in the state of California that says that you cannot talk about money in a medical setting in the actual treatment or exam.
That's
So,
interesting.
California, you're on your own on this one. But for everybody else in all other 49 states, as far as I know. So here's the effect. This is a psychology thing. So if, Gary, let me ask you this. If you've been sitting in the chair for an hour or more, conversations back and forth, recommended treatment, the whole deal, and so you've been sitting there for an hour, the moment you put your feet on the ground and you grab your cell phone, where does your mind go?
I want to get out of there.
Yeah. So you're into the messages on your phone and you're on in your mind all the other stuff that you have to do.
Yeah.
So the rule here is that physiology dictates psychology, meaning how we hold ourselves physically impacts how we think. So if I'm sitting in the chair and that's the flow, I'm more apt to pay attention to what you're saying to me if you keep me in the same position. The moment you move me, my mind goes other places. So, recommendation, if it's at all possible, you can't always do this, but the recommendation would be chair side appointing and chair side financial arrangements if you want to be more successful at keeping the patient's attention and reduce stress from having to try and corral patients and keep their attention once you got them out of the chair. So chair side financial arrangements and scheduling is our preference. If you can do that at all, it is the preference. All right, let's talk about payment. So recommendation, every practice needs to have third-party payment options. Make it easy for patients to pay. So here's the criteria in today's market. Here's the criteria for making it easy for patients to pay and engaging with a good third-party payment platform or system. So here's the criteria. In today's market, no application should be required. So if you're working with a third-party payment system where they got to fill out a lengthy application, there are systems that are a lot more efficient and effective than that. No hard hit inquiry to their credit. So you should be able to do patient financing today without doing anything to their credit on the front end. The approval should be almost instant with all the technology that's available today. And then finally, they should have flexible payment options to choose from. So if you're gonna make your life less stressful and your patient's life less stressful, then the more options you have that you can present or that you can have as part of your financial arrangements toolbox to help them, then it makes everybody's life easier. So that's the criteria for a good third-party payment platform patient financing system. We'll have some recommendations on that after we finish the formal education part. Here's the next tip. If you want to de-stress your life, separate payment from the date of service. So this is for bigger treatment. So somebody's coming in for larger restorative treatment. This is what we call preventing the financial flu. That's where the patient gets sick on the day of treatment. Well, what they're sick about is having to pay the balance of what they owe. So separate the payment from the date of service. So when you do the financial arrangements, then part of those financial arrangements is that you identify when the payments will be made for that treatment, and the final payment gets made before they come in, so they don't have to worry about when they don't have to worry about that on the date of service. So again, if you have a secure credit card system where you can keep their credit card on file, as long as you have their written approval, then you can run those payments when you want with their approval, but it doesn't have to be point of sale where they're paying on the date of service. So the more you can separate payment, especially for bigger treatment, from the date of service, your show rate will go up. People will actually show up for their treatment, and you'll reduce what we call the financial flu. All right, here's the next tip. Welcome to Ohio. All right, so Ohio is an acronym that stands for Only Handle It Once. So this is a good motto to live by in every area of your life, when you're, opening the mail, when you're filing insurance claims, when you're collecting. Only handle it once. So that's our recommendation in terms of insurance, dealing with insurance claims, filing insurance claims. If you're going to do it, and do it in one sitting. Only handle it once. Don't come back and do it piecemeal. Only handle it once. Here's a couple of quick tips. Number one, make sure you're using the right claim form. So the most current insurance claim form is the 2024 claim form. So in the bottom left-hand corner of the claim, just make sure that you're using the 2024 claim form. Number two, make sure that your practice management software is always updated, especially with the most recent changes that have been made in the insurance coding. They update them every year. So make sure you're always updated, so you're filing accurate information. Number four is always make sure you're running the validation report to make sure that all your claims are valid and that there's no problems with those claims. And then the last one is every day, make sure and run your procedures not attached report to make sure that all the procedures that you did got properly filed with insurance. So I went through that really quick. But those are things that will make your life a lot less stressful if you just do those on a daily basis. Only handle it once. Make sure you're using the right claim form. Run your validation report, and make sure you run your procedures not attached. That will de-stress your life in the front office. All right, next, big area of stress, messaging and talking to patients. This is a payment deal. One of my favorite things is the text to pay function. Let me give you a little backstory on this, little consumer background. This particular piece of research found that 78% of medical providers primarily collect from patients using paper and manual processes, while 73% of patients prefer to pay their medical bills online. Everybody's online today. So we got to make it easier for them to pay digitally. In this particular research, 90% of patients say that their loyalty to a healthcare provider, one of the big factors is the financial experience that they have with that provider. So making it easy and making it convenient. 32% of patients say they will pay their bill in less than 5 minutes when they receive a secure text. That's pretty good, 32%. So the whole text to pay option, the whole function is you can use it for almost anything. Outstanding patient portion, co-pays, if you want quick payment. If you want, then you give them the opportunity to pay before they come in, like we just talked about. Separate payment from the date of service. And again, patient preference is they prefer this. So it improves collections. It'll speed up your cash flow. And it has an impact on your schedule, right? And it makes it easier for patients to check in and check out. So if you already have text to pay in place, use it. If you don't, it is time. It will de-stress your life if you have this function. Makes it easier for you, easier for the patient. All right, so end of day checklist. This is one that if we did a poll question on this one, Gary, which we're going to do one, but on a different area.
Yeah.
This is one that I would venture to say probably 90% of practices when we go into a practice, they're not doing this, and it's one of the most important things you do. So listen up on this one. This will change your life if you will do this on a daily basis. This is what we call the end of day checklist. There are 5 things on your end of day checklist. Number 1, your patient sign-in sheet. Now I'm going to give you a piece that we recommend with all the digital everything today, which is great. One of the best practices in terms of validation and keeping everything where it's supposed to be is to have a HIPAA compliant patient sign-in sheet. You need something, whether it's digital or whether it's on paper, in the patient's handwriting that they showed up. So not just a check mark, but where actually they signed in with a signature patient sign-in sheet. And so the end of day checklist is that both the doctor and someone in the front office goes through quickly the patient sign-in sheet to make sure that everyone that signed in got treated, or that everyone that got treated signed in, right? It ought to be in both places. This is checks and balances. Number 2, check the provider day sheet. So every dentist, every hygienist should, at the end of the day, look at their day sheet to verify that every procedure that they did was accounted for in the practice management software, that everything they did was there and that there's nothing missing, that it all got accounted for correctly. Third thing is the adjustment report. So the adjustment report ought to be reviewed every day by the doctor or somebody that is in a management position to make sure that nothing was adjusted or written off that was not permitted. Again, checks and balances. Number 4, the bank deposit is checked, that everything that shows in the practice management software ended up in the bank, that those 2 things match. And then finally, the last thing, that the dentist or whoever is in the top authority position in the office checks the audit trail. So this is the report in your practice management system that details out every function that was done that day. And primarily what you're looking for is to make sure that there's no unauthorized write-offs or adjustments that are not totally above board. So checking those 5 things every day then creates accountability, checks and balances, and keeps things from spinning out of control. It will de-stress your life. I'm going to share a quick story, Gary, about this real quick. And it's from my controller that I have in one of my companies, a veteran controller. And before we brought him on board, one of the things that he said to me, he said, I will come to work for the company under one condition, and that is you never, ever trust your accountant.
Hmm.
And I said, well,
That's
you're going to be my
interesting.
accountant. And he said, that's right. And I said, well, why would I hire you if I can't trust you? He said, you can trust me, but you're not going to, and you're not going to have to, because we're going to set up the system so there's checks and balances in every area, so you never have to operate on trust alone. And that has
That's
been an
interesting.
invaluable lesson to me. And that's what the end of day checklist is. It protects everybody in the practice, protects everybody who works up front, and it protects the practice and the dentist, so everybody knows what everybody else is doing. So that's one of our recommendations. So poll question, let's put this is our 3rd poll question. Which of the following is not part of the end of day checklist? So the provider day sheet, the bank deposit, the payroll report, or the adjustment report. Which one of those is not part of the end of day checklist?
We got a runaway winner for sure. We'll give it another second here. Yep. All right, Steve.
Payroll report, you got it. 95% were paying attention. Love that. Thank you. All right. Last tip, Gary, is all about the goose.
Oh, I'm
So
curious about this.
So we started our webinar talking about Apollo 13 in a life and death situation. I'm going to finish with another life and death situation. This has been such a delightful, lovely. I'm going to start with life and death and finish with life and death. This is all about balance. So you're all familiar with the Aesop's fable of the goose and the golden egg. So the short story is the poor farmer was destitute. All he had was the goose left. And one morning he went out to the barn, and this goose, his prize goose, had laid this golden colored egg. He took it to the assayer in town, who told him, "This is solid gold. You're a rich man." The next morning he goes out to the barn, same thing, another golden egg. The next day, another one and another one. Pretty soon he's phenomenally wealthy. One morning at breakfast, he's sitting with his wife, and they're talking about this golden egg phenomenon. And they came up with this brilliant idea. He said, what if we just kill the goose, cut it open, and we'll just get all the golden eggs at once? We don't have to wait for the daily ration. So sure enough, he goes out, he wrings the goose's neck, he slices him open, and what does he find? Nothing. What's the moral of the story? Don't kill the goose. Who's the goose? It's not the patient. The goose is you. That's what this webinar has been all about, from burnout to balance. Don't kill the goose. Stay balanced. Take care of yourself, because that's what allows you to take care of your patients. So take care of the goose, be good to yourself, implement the things that we've talked about, of many, many things you can do to have more balance and more efficiency in your practice, but be good to yourself so you can be good to your patients. We mentioned this at the beginning. If you happen to join us late, you can scan this QR code for the hack sheet for today that details out the action items to add more balance into your practice in your life. And I also put the bit.ly, the mini URL that's in the chat box as well. You can do that as well. All right, so that ends the formal education part of what for our webinar today. And Gary, I think you have a few details you'd like to share in
Yep.
terms of recommendations that people can use to implement some of the things we've talked about today.
Yeah, Steve, thanks for a great presentation, folks. As Steven mentioned, that concludes the CE portion. Just have a few housekeeping items, a few reminders. And as Steven mentioned throughout the presentation, there are a few key tips and tactics and tools you can use to alleviate that burnout, get you to that balance. And part of that is a great payment solution, one that you can text, have online on your website, flexible payment plans, keeping a card on file, and of course, offering patient financing. Steve, can you go to this next slide?
Yes.
Thank you. So Bridge Payments, Rectangle Health, as I mentioned at the top of the hour, falls under the practice management Bridge umbrella and offers you all of those solutions. I do see that some of you have already requested a demo of the platform. We appreciate it and we'll be in touch shortly. But Bridge Payments does get you there, offering that text message functionality, not just for payments, but for scheduling as well. And we'd love to talk to you about that. Next up on the is bridge engagement. Steve, if you could keep next slide. Yep, and compliance. So engagement and compliance, speaking to patients, getting them scheduled, managing wait lists, and of course compliance. All of that falls under the practice management bridge umbrella. And again, we invite you to take that demo with us to see how we can simplify your day-to-day and prevent that burnout. Steve, okay to go to the next slide as well.
And that's
And,
it.
and that's it, folks. A few housekeeping items as well. Just wanted to run through. CE credits will be emailed to you within 2 weeks of today, so be on the lookout for those. Within 24 hours, you will also receive the recording of this session with a link to upcoming CE credit webinars. I have those links in the chat as well. And last but not least, when this webinar ends, you will be prompted to take a survey, and we'd love to have your feedback. In the words of the great Matthew McConaughey, all right, all right, all right. That wraps it up for us. Stephen, thank you again for
Thanks, Gary.
great
Thanks for
training.
being with us today, everybody.
Of course, thank you for
Take care
joining
of
us
the
and have a
goose.
great rest of your day.
All right.
Take care.